Mixing 2D and 3D animation in Blender is fun, but there's many things that can go wrong. Join me in this quick breakdown of what I learned from making this animation. I started by modeling the sword first. There's a great add-on called Auto Mirror that comes with Blender. It mirrors the object and removes the other half automatically. It saves me few steps every single time. I used a mirrored plane to block out the basic shape. I moved the points around and used Subdivide if I wanted more points to work with. Then I extruded and added some details. I wanted the sword to have a glow of some sort, so I duplicated the outer edge, separated it and did a little extrusion, and added the emission shader with the bloom setting turned on. I parented the glow to the sword object. I used basic principle BSDF shaders for all of the sword parts. Then I thought I could try animating this. So I parented the sword to a circle empty. Circle shape worked better for my brain and it was easier to animate. I used the empty object because then I could use another object beside the sword if I wanted to change it later. Which is a cool workflow if you ask me. So I animated few variations. But I really liked this slamming animation. So to take things further, I wanted to add some effects to this. I made all the effects using Grease Pencil objects. With Grease Pencil you can create 2D animations in 3D space very easily. It has its own set of modifiers and effects that save you time. For the swing, I drew a stroke that had a circle shape, added a Subdivide modifier to it to add more points to work with. Then I added a build modifier to it, and another build modifier with the vanishing setting turned on. I also played with the fade effect found in the modifier. This allows also to control the thickness and opacity while the animation happens. I broke the line more by adding a dot dash modifier to it. Also multiple strokes modifier with the fade setting turned on. And a noise modifier to change the positions automatically. This way I got a bunch of strokes doing their thing without doing too much extra work. I played with all the settings until I was happy with the results. For the sword powering up, I drew a single stroke first, added a Subdivide modifier to it, also multiple strokes modifier without fade, then few thickness modifiers. The first one unifies the stroke and another one adds taper to it. Two noise modifiers with cranked up settings can produce cool effects like this. I also added an array modifier to duplicate the lines, and two build modifiers like before. I also added glow and rim effects to add some variation to the strokes. For the impact, I drew a bunch of strokes going upwards. I added two build modifiers like before, some subdivision and thickness modifiers, dot dash modifier and array modifier. Also glow and rim effects like before. This was looking quite awesome and I was about to call it done, but I thought I should try adding a character to this animation. This would be totally different from the last time when I used a 3D model for the base animation. I drew inspiration from old Conan movies for this. I didn't know what kind of character I wanted to add yet, so I started with really basic circle shapes. Looking back, I should have made this with basic strokes and modified the thickness to resemble a character. It would have been a lot faster. Later I sketched few options on paper and decided to make the character a mouse, a Conan mouse. I added another layer and drew a very basic animation on top of the circles to see how it would look. Then I started to make the real thing. Final version had 5 layers, one for the head, 2 for arms, one arm in the front and another one in the back, one for the body and last one for the tail. I used a basic white material with a black stroke. The tail is just a white stroke. Using these normal materials allows me to quickly change the colors if I happen to change my mind. I changed the positions of some of the layers in 3D space using the edit mode. Some parts would cover the sword and others would be behind it. Some parts I had to flip the arm from the front layer to the back, so I moved the arm to the back layer and added a blank keyframe to the front one. I made breakdown keyframes for each pose and used linear interpolation to fill the gaps. Then I added some camera animations to make the jump more interesting. Looking back, I should have made the camera animation first, because these effects needs a certain angle to work, so parts of that drawing can have a wonky offset if you move the camera too much. so I basically had to adjust everything again. Luckily there's multi-frame editing feature that can also help. I also realized I could try moving and rotating the grease pencil object in 3D space. This method could have also worked. Then I added rim and shadow effects to the mouse object. I animated the rim effect to follow the sword's glow. I also added blur and wave distortion effects to break the shape a little. Also a noise modifier with the noise scale turned on, but without the randomize option turned on. This only changes the drawing and doesn't add any animation to it. Now that I had the sword and the character animation ready, I wanted to add a 3D background to it. For the ground, I used a subdivide plane with a displace modifier on it. Texture was set to clouds with Voronoi F2 basis. Ground shader had some noise textures added to them. I also drew some grease pencil grass sticking out of the ground plane. I could easily decide the point where to draw by having the stroke placement set to 3D cursor and drawing plane set to front. I only needed to switch to object mode and select a new spot to draw on. For the mountains, I used landscape models and placed them far away from the camera. I added a little bit of brightness to the shader colors to make them seen more further away. I added a sphere with a moon texture on it and made it red. So, what I learned from this project and what I should do differently next time. I should have planned what I was doing before doing anything. Even a basic idea would have helped. Here I went with the flow, which is okay I guess, but I wasted a lot of time exploring, especially the camera movement part. It is a lot easier to work with a set motion than realizing you want one, and waste time correcting the old one, which is kinda bummer if you don't have a lot of spare time like me. Modifiers and effects are awesome. They saved me a lot of time and gave me extra tools with the animation. Anyways, lots of trial and error here. Hope you learned something new. Thanks for watching. I have more grease pencil tutorials and project breakdowns on my channel.